Here we go. The rumors around Miami, John Harbaugh, and Mike McDaniel are absolutely flying right now. Is Miami going to keep Mike McDaniel over John Harbaugh? Are they going to fire Mike McDaniel to pursue John Harbaugh? We have seen reports being reported on both angles of Mike McDaniel staying, that the Dolphins already contacted John Harbaugh. A lot that we have to go over on today's show. And if you're asking me, because there has been so many different reports on the matter, I am willing to come up here and confidently say Miami's absolutely interested. You had Albert Breer on Sunday talk about how McDaniel is safe, but if a guy like Tomlin or Harbaugh becomes available, well, then that will have forced the Dolphins ownership group to rethink McDaniel's future in Miami. Well, now that Harbaugh is loose and available to be hired, I think that's what is happening right now, and we're going to get into everything on today's show, so stick with us. We saw the NFL news world kind of go bananas yesterday after it was announced that John Harbaugh is being fired. And Adam Schefter, in the first 45 minutes after that firing, reported that Harbaugh has been reached out to by 7 different NFL teams expressing interest in hiring John Harbaugh. If you're doing the math at home, by the way, Baltimore firing Harbaugh created a 7th job opening, which means there is 6 teams other than the Ravens, which means 7 teams reaching out for Harbaugh would mean 1 team that had a head coach currently employed reached out for John Harbaugh. I mean, that tells me there are teams working behind the scenes to see if Harbaugh would be interested because they would rather have him than their current head coach, which is why I do think Miami might be that team. But Dianna Russini also reported and tweeted out that not just 1 team with a current head coach has shown interest, but potentially multiple teams with a current head coach expressing interest around the league in potentially hiring John Harbaugh. If you do not think Miami is one of those teams that have expressed interest in John Harbaugh to at least 1% of a degree, I think you are absolutely out of your mind and a little naive. I mean, I think Tampa Bay is certainly one of those teams that could have been interested. I think Miami is one of them. I'm not really sure what other teams would be interested that are currently contemplating keeping or firing their head coach. Potentially the Buffalo Bills, in all honesty. If they lose to Jacksonville on Sunday, they could absolutely fire Sean McDermott and maybe go hire John Harbaugh. So there are a lot of teams with current head coaches that might make the change and fire their head coach to go out and pursue Harbaugh. And as I've been saying, I expect Miami to be one of those teams. Josina Anderson, who certainly is hit or miss on her reporting, but she has a very long track record of getting things right. So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. And maybe it's not because it just fits my narrative of getting John Harbaugh as head coach. But she reported on Wednesday morning that the Dolphins have been in touch with John Harbaugh, per league sources. She also mentions Todd Monken, who is the OC in Baltimore, could follow Harbaugh wherever he goes. That's a story for a different day, and we'll cross that bridge when we eventually get there if we have to. But I did mention there has been reports on both sides, specifically from the Miami Herald's Barry Jackson. He tweeted out today in a report that he is not reporting the Dolphins don't have interest or they will not have interest, but Barry Jackson did report on Wednesday morning that Miami has not reached out to Harbaugh's camp in any degree. And unfortunately, I had to call cap on my guy, Barry. I think he's the GOAT of Miami reporters. He's been doing it at the Herald for longer than I've been alive. And to me, he has made a name for himself in the Miami media space and as an insider and writer because he has gained the favor of front offices like the Dolphins, like the Miami Heat. So to me, when I see him reporting stuff like this, I think it's borderline damage control because Miami's ownership group clearly would not want Mike McDaniel and others out there to know that they're interested in John Harbaugh, but they haven't fired Mike McDaniel yet. So to me, that's kind of where things might land in Barry Jackson's reporting. More to get to here, but hit that sub button. And I know a lot of you guys are potentially excited about going out and getting John Harbaugh. The two teams that might be the biggest competition for us is Giants and the Falcons. And while they're killing us in subscribers gained since Monday, the end of the season and the start of the offseason, hit that sub button for daily Dolphins content. But also, let's catch up the Giants now and Falcons today, who's going nuclear. But then you have to also factor in this report. And we're going to go right back to Dianna Russini because she has had a lot of hit and misses on player-related stuff. But if you go back 365, she was the number one insider and reporter on GMs, on head coaching cycles last January. So she has a lot of inside sources on this matter. And she reported that the Dolphins, who have been meeting with GM candidates and interviewing on Zoom Tuesday and Wednesday, have had conversations with certain candidates about keeping Mike McDaniel for 2026, but also have been telling them and asking them about their thoughts of moving on from Mike McDaniel and finding a different head coach in the cycle, whether it be John Harbaugh or someone else. And you see this report, and this is a big one to me. Because for the first time, I feel like this Miami Dolphins ownership group is making normal, sound decisions. They finally fired Chris Grier in October, and although I think they should have fired Mike McDaniel as soon as the season ended, no matter what, they are at least allowing whoever they hire at GM to give their honest opinion on the head coach, on the coaching staff, and are giving them the ability, potentially, to make change. Because, just for example, I don't know if this is true or not, but if John Eric Sullivan says, yeah, I think Mike's a good coach, but I think we would need to go in a different direction, if they hire him, he is going to do that. Now, you could also say Stephen Ross is going to hire someone who just wants to keep Mike McDaniel. That could be the case, but I do think that's a little ridiculous to think he's going to do that, and he likes Mike McDaniel that much to where he's just going to hire a GM that wants to keep Mike McDaniel. But there is the option out there to get rid of Mike. And I want you to predict it. Do the Dolphins fire Mike McDaniel? Not what you want to happen, what you think is going to happen. Why if you think they do, and if you think they do not. I am truly fascinated to see who Miami hires as GM. I mean, there's a lot of reports and rumors out there that this is going to be a quick and swift process. We've talked about that over the last 48 hours. I'm going to go on record willing to say I think this might get done by Friday night. We might go into the weekend knowing who our general manager is, which could ultimately lead to Mike McDaniel being canned Saturday, Sunday, or potentially on Monday. That's certainly an option out there if Miami hires a certain GM that doesn't want to keep him. And I'm intrigued to see what happens here because when you think about the 8 candidates for the GM position, that this is it. It's going to be one of these 8 to replace Chris Grier. There are certain directions that you can probably think and come to the conclusion on what happens with Mike McDaniel. And potentially even John Harbaugh. Things will get interesting. Once we see that notification on who the Dolphins are hiring as their next GM, I think we will immediately be able to form an opinion on what Miami ultimately does with Mike McDaniel, a head coach. There's a couple candidates on that list where I would have no clue, but I would say out of the 6 candidates, 6 out of the 8 candidates on there, I would feel pretty strongly to be able to guess and predict if they would keep Mike McDaniel or if they would get rid of Mike McDaniel. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But today's show is sponsored by Mando. It's a new year, which means new me, new you. And the only thing that I'm bringing with me from 2025 into 2026 is Mando whole body deodorant that is safe to put anywhere on your body and smells fantastic. Personally, my favorite scent is the Mount Fuji one. I've been using that one for a very long time. Mando has so many great products outside of just deodorant, though. They have body wash and my personal favorite, deodorant wipes. Mando has you covered because it's clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. I mentioned those deodorant wipes. I never go anywhere without them, folks. I talk about this every time we talk about Mando. But I'm a busy person, whether it's filming videos for you guys, golfing, playing basketball, running errands, and if I feel like I need to get a little bit more fresh and make sure I'm not smelly, the deodorant wipes are always there to make the trick. Perfect for traveling as well. Some men mask their BO with sense. Mando men get the job done right. Don't mask it, Mando it. Available in retailers near you, or you can head to shopmando.com because for a limited time, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. That code, CHAT. That's it. When you go to shopmando.com, you get 20% off site-wide plus free shipping with code CHAT, SHOPMANDO.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and hello to long-lasting freshness. I know a lot of people aren't going to like it, but if the San Francisco 49ers, one of those three executives that Miami are interviewing, either RJ Gillen, Josh Williams, or Ahmed, I do think Mike McDaniel ultimately is here in 2026. Just because I think those three have a familiarity with Mike McDaniel, specifically Josh Williams. And I'm not dismissing them as candidates, by the way, just because they're likely to keep Mike McDaniel. I don't think that's the biggest deal in the world because in all likelihood, if the Dolphins are as bad as we probably think they will be in 2026, Mike McDaniel will be fired, and whoever Miami's GM is, even if it's one of the 49ers guys, will likely pick a new head coach alongside Stephen Ross in the 2027 cycle. But on the flip side, if we were to hire Chad Alexander, the Rams assistant, or excuse me, not the Rams, the Chargers assistant GM, I think that means the likelihood of hiring John Harbaugh as head coach rises significantly. Those two have a working relationship. It's already been speculated by some insiders, by some NFL analysts, that Harbaugh could look to team up with Chad Alexander in a position that needs a head coach and GM. The only two places that could have a new GM and new head coach is Miami if they fire Mike McDaniel. Atlanta needs a new head coach and GM. And I do believe, even though New York backed Joe Shane, if they hired John Harbaugh, they would contemplate moving off of Shane and bringing in a guy like Chad Alexander. But the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is because they do have such a strong connection. They were together in Baltimore for 10 plus years. Remember, Alexander, we broke this down on our video Wednesday morning, spent 20 years inside the Ravens organization from 1999 to 2019 with 10 plus years as a scout. Then went to the Jets for a couple years as their director of player personnel, and then became the assistant GM for the Chargers over the last 2 years, working with John Harbaugh's brother, Jim Harbaugh. So there's an extremely solid and strong connection between the Harbaughs and Chad Alexander, which is why I think if Miami ultimately announces Chad Alexander as the new GM for Miami on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, it increases the likelihood that Harbaugh may actually want to become the Dolphins head coach if Miami moves on from Mike McDaniel. And I will say this, even if you hire Chad Alexander, you are still going to have a ton of competition in the attempt to hire Harbaugh as your next head coach. The New York Giants are pursuing Harbaugh in an extremely fast and hard rate. It's being widely reported that Harbaugh is the Giants' #1 head coaching target, but they also have some other names at the top of their list, including Kevin Stefanski, the former Browns head coach, Mike McCarthy, the former Packers and Cowboys head coach, and this is going to take some time as well. So for people out there that are getting concerned that the Dolphins will miss out on Harbaugh because they haven't fired McDaniel yet, I think Miami could wait until firing McDaniel Friday or Saturday and still come away with John Harbaugh. He is in no rush to join a team. He is likely going to take his time. I think there's rumors out there that he might ultimately wait till next Tuesday or Wednesday to start taking interviews and meeting face-to-face with some of these teams that want to hire him as head coach, which gives Miami an ample amount of time to hire a GM, make a decision on Mike McDaniel, and get in on the race. To me, finish out the GM process and then go from there. If it's John Eric Sullivan, let him choose. Josh Williams, let him choose. Chad Alexander, let him choose. On McDaniel, and then if you choose to fire Mike over the weekend or on Monday, you start to request some interviews throughout the week. Because remember, if you're an assistant in the postseason, you cannot interview unless you're out of the playoffs or you're on a bye week. So the only assistants that you're missing out on right now are the Broncos and Seahawks, or it's a head coaching candidate from a team that's eliminated from the playoffs. So if you hire a GM in the next 4 days, you're not really missing out on much when it comes to potential head coach candidates. But take a guess for me before we close out today's show. Where does John Harbaugh coach in 2026? Do you think it's in Miami? Do you think it's in Atlanta, New York, somewhere else? Take a guess. Let me know your thoughts. Even though I really want him in Miami, replacing Mike McDaniel, I do have to lean with the Giants because we know that New York is heavily interested in Harbaugh, and they do have a nice kind of thing building, even though I don't really think they're close to competing. You have Jackson Dart. If Harbaugh thinks he's a franchise quarterback, why wouldn't Harbaugh go coach Jackson Dart? Because you got a good couple of pieces defensively as well with Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, the rookie, I'm spacing on his name. Who? Abdul Carter, spacing on his name. Thank you, Coop. That was one of the rare times Coop helped me out. I was very spaced on that one. But I do think he would go to the Giants, but who knows? Maybe Miami can make an interesting pitch. I'll say this to close out the show. Final word. Even if the Dolphins ultimately do not get a thumbs up from John Harbaugh, hey, I want to come be your head coach if you fire Mike McDaniel, I think Miami should still risk and go into the depths of the unknown and fire Mike McDaniel, because there are a bunch of good candidates still out there, whether it's Clint Kubiak in Seattle, their offensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, Vance Joseph, Kevin Stefanski, Mike McCarthy. There are a lot of candidates that could be significant upgrades over Mike McDaniel. Is it a guarantee that it's an upgrade? No. But is it possible? Absolutely. Which is why I think Miami should fire Mike McDaniel no matter what. And we will be here no matter what, informing you on all Dolphins news, GM, coaching. We got you covered. Hit that sub button.